What's up, everybody? Hey, Tom Laird here, host of the Advice from a Call Center Geek podcast and founder of Expivia. For exceptional contact center outsourcing, trust Expivia. We're fully AI-driven, as all of you know, and can handle voice, email, chat, and all of your digital channels. Our 600-seat USA contact center is expert in healthcare, financial services, insurance, tech support, retail, and more. Experts on the NICE CX1 platform, we ensure seamless customer experiences. DM me or visit expiviausa.com for more. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Advice from a Call Center Geek, the call center and contact center podcast. We try to give you guys some actionable items, real things that you can take back to your call center, improve their overall quality, improve your agent experience, hopefully improve the customer experience as well. How's everybody doing? Interesting times we have here right now in the States. We were initially going to release this episode on Monday, which I believe would have been June 1st. It is now June 4th, which is Thursday, and we're kind of re-recording the episode. Not that there was anything wrong with the other one, but with all the protests and the kind of the rioting and kind of the unrest that's going on, we thought maybe Monday would have been a bad day to release a kind of discipline corrective action in your call center podcast. It seemed kind of tone deaf to the situation. So we're going to record it right now. I guess a little bit with this preamble here to kind of set the table for kind of where our thought is. And again, this is, I think a lot of you have reached out, especially you newer call center managers, and have asked me questions on how do you deal with reps that maybe aren't giving attitude aren't giving effort, maybe come in with an attitude, maybe, don't feel like working today. How do we deal with those guys? And now that we're in an at-home model for most of us, how do you deal with that when you hear a bad, monitoring? How do you get across that from an instant message, from an SMS, or from those communication tools that we're using now in Slack and Teams? What do you do if somebody's, I've heard a lot of you guys that you just, sometimes you just have reps dip, right? They just leave. They're scheduled to 5, it's 2:30, they just leave, they log out, they're gone. What do you do? Right? So I want to tackle and kind of help you at least with some of those issues, because we all face those issues, and some of how we deal with them is different. I did a post on LinkedIn this week, and it got some, got a lot of pushback. I got some kind of thumbs up on it, but discipline in the call center and how you handle your call center is really based on your culture. So there's a lot of different methods and different approaches and different ways. So again, what I'm going to tell you is not what I think is the end all be all, the only way to do it. It's what I have found to be successful. And in looking at call center consulting and looking at, different ways that call centers operate, what I'm finding, and it's 100% in my center too, is that, your corrective action or your discipline. I hate that word discipline, right? It sounds like you're a dad, like the reps are your children, which is not true. But it's really based on your personality. Like if you notice how the rules, the policies, the procedures, if you kind of have them in place, or the person who puts those policies and procedures, a lot of them is set and deemed from their personality. So you have to be careful with that when you're creating policies, when you're creating HR, books that deal with your contact center, because sometimes your personality might not be the right culture, right? And you need to tone it down, or you amp it up, all depending on what you're looking to do in your contact center. So I'm going to tell you what my personality is. I am super laid back. Everybody here calls me the champagne bottle, which I don't know if that's good or not, but at least they say it to my face. So, but basically, I kind of let things go. I try to deal with it. And then I just pop. Right. And I think that I don't want to say that our policies are written that way, because that probably wouldn't be the best way to have some policies. But basically, we try to do everything we can up front before we get into any kind of discipline. Right. We want to try to do everything we can that's positive. We want to try to positively reinforce. We want to incent. We want to do all those kind of things before it gets to a point where, we have to have a talk, pull somebody off the floor, send somebody home, give a 3-day suspension, all those kind of things. So I think the policies and how we operate here at Expivia correlate pretty well to what my personality is when it comes to those kind of situations. So I give a lot of leeway, and I think this is probably the norm, right? I think a lot of you guys probably give a lot of leeway, and then you say enough is enough. Now, there's some of you out there I know that are very authoritarian, that this is the way, and if you're not doing it, you're out of here. And then I know there's some of you out there that need to get tougher, that just kind of let reps kind of roll over you, and the reps are kind of running the room, which can't really happen either. So you got to find a happy medium. I think that this is one of the ways to do it is to put a bunch of things up front to try to solve some issues, and then get into the discipline here in the back. So let's first talk about a very controversial topic that I know a lot of you will disagree with, some of you will agree with, but what happens when there's conversation on the call center floor that is probably inappropriate, right? And when I say inappropriate, in our policy, we kind of talk about religion and we kind of talk about politics as being two things that we don't discuss on the call center floor. And I know I've been running a call center in different call centers for the last 20, 25 years. And I've only had one fight on the call center floor, and that was about 15 years ago. And it was a political conversation. It was some kind of Republican Democrat conversation. And it turned into an actual fist fight that I had to go run and subdue some reps. Luckily, I'm bigger than most of the reps. Luckily for me, I was bigger than those two guys, so we were able to kind of break it up pretty quick. But, that kind of got me thinking about what can be done on the center floor and what can. And so really, we want to really focus on three things. Is number one is serving the client as best we possibly can, having a living for our reps and our employees. And third is having a really cool work environment. So if the conversation or what we're doing doesn't kind of fit in those three bottles, those three kind of tenets, then it's probably something that we need to look at that shouldn't be there. So if you do have conversation, and again, let's just say that we have some type of political conversation or we have a religious conversation, and the supervisor or manager hears it, it's got to be squashed right away. Right. And I don't think they get involved at all. All you say in the conversation, they get involved in breaking it up. But you basically just say, hey, guys, inappropriate conversation for the call center floor. We can't talk about that. And then try to broach another subject. Be like, Janie, by the way, awesome sale. Or, hey, you guys are 5 points down. You guys get one more sale or one more good QA score. You're going to be right there. Something that kind of brings them back into the work environment. And that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, depending on how deep they are in the conversation. You got to really try to nip that right in the bud. If they've been talking for 10 minutes and you let it go, you're probably in trouble when it comes to, trying to break it up there. If it does continue, you got to remove them from the floor, right? And it's not yelling, it's not screaming, but hey guys, this conversation is inappropriate. It can't happen on the call center floor. I'm going to have to ask us to kind of walk off here or go to HR or whatever your policy is there. So you want to take any type of inappropriate conversation off the floor. Don't let it spread, because sometimes that can spread like wildfire and people start taking sides. And next thing you know, if you don't have something that happens that day, you have people that start, not liking or forming teams against each other based on some political views, and that's going to probably happen already. So you don't want to kind of exacerbate the problem by allowing it to continue in your call center. So we do that. Obviously now with using Slack, with IMing, it's a little bit easier. We can delete some comments, do something. We haven't had any of that issue. The reps kind of know what's going on. So if there's anything that kind of gets to that line, supervisor might make a joke, or they might say, hey guys, can't talk about that. I'm going to delete this. And we kind of let them know. And 9 times out of 10, I would say 9.9 times out of 10, it fixes the situation. All right, let's talk about some other kind of situations, like a rep that, let's say, we'll do this both. We'll do this if they come into your brick and mortar call center or if they're doing this at home. But they come into work And you know how it is. They're like, this sucks. I don't want to be here. They sit in their chair and they're just, they're giving zero effort and they have an attitude. So if you guys have followed the podcast, the two things that we ask that you have to bring every single day is just attitude and effort. That's all. Everything else we train you, we deal you with. We deal and help you with. So when we see that somebody is not providing effort, somebody is kind of being a energy vampire, as John Gordon says, and sucking energy from other reps as well and bringing them down, we have to stop that. So the first thing is we kind of have a 3-part method. And this is not from any management book that you'll probably find, but this is kind of what has worked for us over the years. Is number one, the supervisor will kind of go up to them. It's very important, I think, that your supervisors have the same reps every day, and I think most of you guys do that so that they understand the personalities, they know what makes them tick. This is why it's really important too to we always talk about controlling the first 30 minutes, that they're greeting the reps. They're taking the temperature of the room. They kind of know who to go up to and who to talk to. So they're going to go up to, Janie, poor Janie. I use Janie a lot. She's always in a bad mood or doing something wrong. But we go up to Janie and we kind of joke, or we talk to her a little bit, or ask her about their kid, or try to make them smile, right? Try to kind of crack that little bit of animosity or kind of laissez-faire attitude maybe they're having now. So we're going to try to do that first, and probably about 25 to 30% of the time that fixes that. If it doesn't, then we're going to just say, hey, come here. And we're going to pull Janie, and we're going to maybe bring them over to the supervisor station, and we're going to be, hey, what's going on? Everything okay? Nothing negative. Be like, I gotta have you. You're a leader here. You got to make sure that you're bringing it, blah, 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 those kind of things. And you're kind of going to give a little bit of a pep talk, a little bit of a rah. Try to get that turnaround. And that's going to get you, most of the time, 50 to 60%. So we're about at 80, 90% of the time, I think that you can really turn somebody early. But if they continue and they don't want to be there, then guys, they can't be on your floor. And whether they are your best rep from a sales perspective, from a QA perspective, from a handle time perspective, it doesn't matter. If you allow that to happen, it kind of festers into your contact center because they know that it's allowed. And then the next day when Janie's, the person sitting next to her is in a bad attitude, you can't do anything with that, right? So you're setting precedents with every single thing that you do as a supervisor, whether it's positive or negative. So we're going to pull Janie off the floor. We're probably going to take her to HR. We're going to try to fix it again, right? We're not here to fire her. We're not here to send her home. She could have had a horrific day. She may have had a horrible night. We're going to try to get to the root cause of the problem. If she needs to go have a smoke, right? If she needs to take 20 minutes, we're going to allow all that. But if she gets in HR and she obviously doesn't want to be there, there's an attitude issue, then guys, she's going to go home. Our policy, which we're going to talk about here with progressive discipline, which I kind of hate that term, but that's kind of what we've used throughout the years. Our policy says she comes back the next day. If everything's fine, it's not a big deal, right? We've kind of documented it. But other than that, we continue on. If there's an attitude, she doesn't want to be there, then it's a 3-day suspension, right? And I think we got to a point, right, where you basically have given that associate 4 or 5 kind of get out of jail free cards, right? 4 or 5 times to try to turn it around. Everything from, take some extra time, go have a cigarette, have a break. We've joked a little bit. We've talked off the floor. We've gone through the raw. We've kind of hit a lot of the things that we need to try to hit to try to get her to kind of turn it around. And if not, then we really have no other choice. So before I get into some other things, I want to talk about progressive discipline. And again, I don't like that term. We're trying to find something better for it because it sounds punitive. And I guess it kind of is. But again, you kind of see what we're doing here, right? We're trying to do everything we can so we don't get to a point where somebody's, missing out on a paycheck, missing out on money, missing out on hours. We don't want that. It hurts them. It hurts us. I was told a long time ago, anybody can fire somebody. It's super easy to fire people, but it's very difficult to make stars and to turn people and to get people motivated and to get going. That's kind of the job of the management team, the job of the supervisor. Anybody can fire. It's super easy. Let's really try to work with these people that we've invested in. They've invested in us. Let's try to make this a mutually beneficial situation. But one of the things that we found to be helpful is a progressive discipline policy, which basically means, you're going from, a talking to the written, to the 3-day, to a improvement plan, to a suspension, to a termination. It also means that we dictate all of those rules ahead of time. This is the number one fault that I see in an HR setting in the call center, is having subjective HR people kind of think about what the punishment, quote unquote punishment, should be, right? Well, you know what, Janie, if I look, she's been written up twice and she was late today, so I think we should send her home today. And then the other HR person says, no, I think she should be 3 days suspended because, I heard the other day that she said this to a rep, right? And you get yourself into a big box when you're starting to make subjective moves on what should happen to somebody, based on what you think. The other thing is you're very emotional. When things are going on the floor, you're emotional and you make mistakes when you're just basing it on just the spur of the moment decision. So you want to sit down and decide with your team what happens when what happens, right? So if somebody's late 5 days in a row, what does that mean? If somebody's late 2 days in a row, what does that mean? If somebody has no effort and they get to HR, what does that mean? If somebody calls off, 5 days in a row and doesn't have a doctor's excuse, what does that mean? So all the different ways, if there's a argument on the call center floor, what does that mean? How do you deal with it? So you want to think of all the different issues that could arise in your call center. You want to talk about how we're going to deal with them as a supervisor, as a management team. And 2, what are the repercussions for the reps, or what are the what's going to happen to the associate? And you want that in writing. So when a rep comes in for training, that first week of training, you're gonna be like, hey guys, here's the deal, right? If you call off 3 days in a row, we got to have a medical excuse, something along those lines. If you don't, then this is what happens. If you get into an argument on the call center floor, if you swear, if there's bad language, this is what happens. If you, fall asleep in your station, right? This is what happens. So all those types of things are kind of written out so that when somebody goes to HR, you can just say, hey, this is kind of what happened. Our policy says this. Guys, there's not a lot of leeway I can give. And then you kind of execute on that. So again, try to take the emotion out of it. Try to take the thought process of what you think should happen and really talk it through ahead of time when there's zero emotion and kind of work those things out. Now, you're going to have things that are going to come up that aren't on your policy, right? Because there's weird stuff happens in the call center all the time, but you keep adding to it. And next thing you know, in a couple of years, you have a really, really robust kind of policy plan for any type of issues that arise. All right, before I go, I want to talk about one thing that's been happening at home with a lot of you guys, and it's happened to us too, no doubt, is people just bailing, right? Bailing on the shift. So, right, the shift ends at hypothetically 5 o'clock. It's 2:30. They just leave, right? What do you do there? You fire them? Do you coddle them? Do you say, what do you do? So what we have found, and again, this work at home is new for us, is if you want to leave early, just let your supervisor know. If you have a sick child, if you have, something comes up, there's an emergency. We get it. It happens all the time. Slack your supervisor. That's our policy. Hey, Janie or Susie, this is Janie. I have an emergency. I have to leave at 2:30 in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And it's fine, right? We'll figure it out. WFM, we'll work it out. Maybe move some people over. We can make adjustments. We can fix things then. When we can't fix it is when you just bail, right? So it's Friday. It's 77 degrees out. It's really nice. And you leave early. So when that happens, right, automatically your login gets disabled by the supervisor, right? And it doesn't get disabled forever, but it gets disabled because people like to kind of just sneak in the next day and pretend nothing happened. And sometimes, the supervisor may forget, HR may forget. We have a whole policy of how HR gets informed of this. We try to Slack them, right, and make sure that nothing's wrong, because sometimes, maybe there's something wrong with their system. The electricity goes out. Everybody's Slack on their phone though too. So if they don't Slack us, if they go radio silent, then, that's when kind of the issues rise, where we're going to lock everything down. They're going to try to log in the next day. It's not going to work. Then they have to call in. Then we're going to have a discussion, right? And then our progressive discipline kind of takes into effect. These are certain things that we've had to add into progressive discipline, as I just talked about, because they weren't in there because we didn't have at home. So I don't know, guys, I hope that's helpful. We haven't done any kind of an HR one in a while. If there's any specific scenarios that you want to, kind of talk to me about, let me know. And I'm sure we've seen it, and we kind of have a plan for what we would do in those situations. So if you want to, go to the Facebook, the Advice from a Call Center Geek Facebook community, and kind of post something, I'm sure everybody can kind of have an opinion on what to do in certain situations. If you want to check me out on LinkedIn, and you can instant message me, or I guess I should say direct message me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to help. Follow me. Please check me out on LinkedIn. Follow me. I'm posting a ton of stuff every single day on call center operations. I'd love to see some more reviews as well if you guys are finding any value with this. And then the last little thing, and I saved it to the end, is if you are looking to change your contact center software, if you're looking to add anything and you don't know where to start or what to turn to, there is callcentergeekconsulting.com, which is just a quick landing page that I created. I have 2 members of my team that are working with me on this, but it's pretty much you're going to talk to me personally. So if you are saying, hey, I have a premise-based solution and I want to move to the cloud, you can just, let me know in a LinkedIn post or go over to callcentergeekconsulting.com to fill out the quick form. I don't even ask for your phone number, I don't believe. I think it's just first name, last name, email, company, right? And we can have a talk and we can have a call, and I can hopefully guide you to some things that may be able to help you. So, all right, guys, stay safe. We'll get through this together. Stock market's going up. I guess we got that going for us, but I still think, as a country, we're kind of coming through this. It's a slow, painful process, but whether it's through these protests or the COVID, and hopefully we pray that there's no kind of resurgence of the pandemic as well with all the protests going on. But all right, interesting times. I hope that this helps. Great to talk to you. Talk to you guys next week.